everybody, welcome to weekly 3.6 and ta-da! It's Miss Lemon because this week we're featuring word problems.
Word problems, everybody's favorite thing to do. Okay, Miss Marino, what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to annotate our word problem so that we can better understand what it's asking us to do.
So when you have a word problem, you really have to read it more than one time. I like to read mine 3 different times. I like to read it just for the reading. Then I like to look what the information is actually asking me. What is the question? And then I go back and find all the information that I need.
Right. So your first time, just like in ELA, we read it through for fluency. So we make sure that we have a good comprehension or understanding of the words that are actually in the question. So for example, we read it through the first time. There were 9 red roses and 2 white roses in the vase. Samaria cut some more roses from her flower garden. There are now 13 red roses in the vase. How many red roses did she cut? So the first time I read it through, I'm just kind of looking for overall general gist of what the question is. Now I'm going to read it through again, and this time I'm going to specifically look for what is the question asking me to do. There were 9 red roses and 2 white roses in the vase. Samaria cut some more roses from her flower garden. There are now 13 red roses in the vase. How many red roses did she cut? So now I know I'm looking for what is the problem asking me to do, and what they want is to know how many red roses did she cut. So that is what I need to do. I need to determine how many red roses she cut altogether.
So we circled it, and I actually like to rewrite it afterwards so that I know what I'm looking for.
Okay.
So, how many red roses? Because there's something about writing things down that helps you remember it better.
Okay. All right, so now with our third reading, we're going to get rid of the information that we don't need, and we're going to just underline the information that's pertinent or that we need for this question to answer. How many red roses did she cut? Because that's what we're looking for. How many red roses did she cut? So there were 9 red roses and 2 white roses in the vase. So we know that it's important that we start out with how many red roses were in the vase. Do we need to know about the 2 white roses? No.
We don't need to know anything about them. A lot of times in math problems, we put other information to distract you, to try and confuse you.
So we're just going to ignore that. And she cut some more roses from her flower garden. We don't need that information.
It helps us see what's going on, but it's not going to help us solve the math problem.
Right. But there are now 13 red roses in the vase. So that is important, because we started out with 9 red roses, and now there are 13. So that is the information that we need to solve this problem, because we're looking for how many red roses did she cut. So now we have to do some math.
Now we have to do the math. And you can think about it in 2 different ways. You can think about I'm going from 9 to 13, and kind of think about how many roses were cut, or you can work backwards and just subtract 13 minus 9.
So we know that in the end, when Samaria is all done, she has 13 red roses. So now, how many roses did she start with?
9, over here.
Okay, so now we could either subtract 9 from 13, or we could figure out what we need to add to 9 to get to 13.
Right. Either way, we're going to end up with 4 red roses.
We are, because 13 minus 9 equals 4, or 9 plus x, which is the number of red roses we have, equals 13. X equals 4, which that might be a little more advanced.
Beautiful. And then I like to, if my problem is given in a sentence form, I think that my answer should be a sentence as well. So if we just scroll down a tad,
sure,
we can, and I'll let you write because your handwriting is much better. So our answer sentence should probably be along the lines of something along, no, actually answering the question. Like, you wouldn't, in English, you wouldn't just write down squirrel when someone is asking you a question. You would write down a complete sentence.
Okay.
So I think we actually need a complete English sentence to answer our question.
Samaria cut 4
red roses.
Red roses.
And that way you're pulling back together again. Did I actually answer the question with my math? Does it make sense?
How
when
many
the
red
question-
roses did she cut? Samaria cut 4 red roses.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
Okay, so now that brings us to example number 2. Robert bought 8 new baseball trading cards to add to his collection. The next day, his dog ate half his collection. There are now only 44 cards left. How many cards did Robert start with? So again, we're going to read it through the first time for fluency. The second time, we're going to read it through to determine what it is the question is asking us to do.
So Robert bought 8 new baseball trading cards to add to his collection. The next day, his dog ate half of his collection. There are now only 44 cards left. How many cards did Robert start with?
So they're asking us to determine how many cards Robert started with.
So, in the end, we're looking for how many cards.
So now we're going to read through it a third time, and this time we're going to determine what information we need to solve the problem. So Robert bought 8 new cards, baseball trading cards. So we know that we have to have that information because that's in addition to how many cards he started with. The next day his dog ate half of his collection. So that's also important because this is a 2-step problem. So we're going to have to do 2 different things. So his dog ate half. And we know that half can be written like that of his collection.
Yep.
There are now only 44 cards left, and we know that's important because that's what we have to end up with as an answer, is 44. So now we know what the question is asking us, and we know which information from this problem we're going to use to solve it.
So we need something to do with 8, 44, and a half to come back with. First of all, we can just think about that our answer is probably going to be bigger than 44. We're going to end up with something larger than 44. And so that's a good ballpark. If you start doing your math and you end up with an answer that's less, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
So I would first focus on this half.
I think it would be good. We know that there are 44 left, and that is half of it. So how can we change that fraction into a number that we can multiply to 44?
So we can just think about the other way. Well, if we took half, that means beforehand he had double. Or 2 times as many. So if we have 44 times 2, we end up with 88 cards. And this was after he bought his 8 new cards.
So our problem is not solved yet.
We did 1 step.
We did 1 step.
Now we have to look at our second step.
And our second step has to do with how many cards did he start with. He ended up, after he purchased 8 cards, he ended up with 88 cards. So what mathematically do we have to do to determine how many cards he started with before he bought that 8 cards, those 8 cards?
So he would have less than 88 cards. So we're going to subtract the 8 from the 88. And the math turns out nice and easy here. We end up with 80 cards.
Okay. So again, if we want to write it in a sentence, how many cards did Robert start with? We would say Robert
started with
80 cards.
And that was easy.
That was easy.
All right, I have one more.
Okay.
This one is one of my favorite types of problems. They're consecutive number problems, and they're really big in high school.
Oh,
so
yes,
I'm
they
giving
are.
you guys a preview of what high school is going to be like. But we can still figure them out at this level.
Yes.
It's not going to be a big problem. So again, we're going to read it once.
Okay. The sum of the 3 consecutive odd numbers is 75. What is the smallest of the 3 numbers? So I'm going to look at this as something that we would do in ELA class. There might be some words that we don't understand. So in order to solve this problem, we first have to understand what the problem is asking us. So my first thing is going to be looking at the words and seeing if there's one word that I might not be too sure of. And the one word that I might have a question about would be the word consecutive. So what does the word consecutive mean?
So consecutive just means that they're in order.
Not necessarily, well, one right after the other, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we know that.
So like 1, 2, 3 would be consecutive
Consecutive
numbers. 5, 6, 7.
Okay.
100, 101, 102.
So that's the first thing that we're going to do. And we know that odd numbers are 3, 5, 7, 9, so on and so forth. So now that I've determined that, now I can go and look at what are they asking me to find. So the question they're asking me is, what is the smallest of the 3 numbers? Okay, so that is the question that I need to answer. Now the third time I'm going through, I'm looking at the information I have and what I need to solve this problem. So the sum of 3 consecutive odd numbers is 75. So the information I need here is sum, because I know that
I absolutely need some.
I need sum because I know that I'm adding.
Yes.
I know that my numbers are odd, so the numbers can't be 2, 3, 4, because that's even, odd, even. I know that they have to be odd numbers.
And they have to be consecutive, which means they have to be numbers that come right after each other.
Exactly. And that they have to equal 75.
So we should underline sum.
We should I'm going to use the red mark.
Yes.
We need sum, we need the fact that they're odd numbers, and we need that they have to equal
And
75.
consecutive.
Oh, and consecutive, excuse me. So I know how I would solve this, Miss Marino, but I'm not sure.
Well, there are 2 ways. I think where you are at, where you're comfortable, I think most of you would probably solve this by trial and error, which is a perfectly acceptable way to solve problems, even on the state test.
Yes.
So you can use trial and error, and you can see, well, 75, I need 3 numbers. So somewhere around the 25 range maybe, because 3 times 25 is 75. So we could start out with maybe 25, 27, and 29.
Okay.
So again, we're looking for numbers that are consecutive. So if I'm starting with 25, the next one would be 27, because I have to skip 26
Right.
because it's even. And then my last one is 29. And if I add these together, 9 and 7 is 16, and 5 is 21. Carry the 2, 2, 4, 6, 8. So we got a little bit high.
But we know that we're in the right ballpark.
Because we're not really that far away. We're 6 away.
So we could actually think to ourselves, if I was to eliminate certain amount from each one, there's 3 numbers here, and if I took 2 away from each one,
Oh, that is a great way to look at it because
so this
of
would
6.
be 27, this would be 25, and this would be 23? Does that work?
I don't know. Let's see. 7 and 5 is 12, plus 3 is 15. Carry the 1, 2, 4, 6. 7.
From an ELA teacher, no less.
Yeah, and there is a mathematical way.
There is.
If you wanted
That's
to.
the way I know how to do it.
You can use your first number would be x. Your second number, what can you tell me about 27 in comparison to 25?
You need to add 2.
So it's x plus 2. And then your third number would be x plus
4.
4, because 9 would be 4 higher than 5. Then you can you scroll for me?
I certainly may.
Then you can take x plus 2 plus x plus 4 equals 75. And now you can end up with 4 and 2 is 6. X and x and x makes 3x. And I don't expect you to do this yet, but for those of you that can see this, it's a nice way to solve this problem. You end up with 75. I was looking at the 6.
I know.
We're going to subtract 6 from both sides. These ones become 0. The 3x comes down. 75 minus 6 will give me 69. And if I divide these by 3, this becomes a 1. It's just x. 69 divided by 3 is going to give me 23. And then from that, I could go back. Well, the first number is x, is 23. The second one is 2 higher, it's 25. The next one is 4 higher, it's going to be 27. But if you scroll back up, I think, so we came up with the numbers 23, 25, and 27. And 90% of the time, this is where you stop because you're so excited that it worked and you're like, yes, those are the answers. You need to go back and look at your question because the question is not asking for the 3 numbers.
The question is actually asking for the smallest of the 3 numbers. So if we were to look at our 3 numbers, well, we'll just do them here.
They're right here.
23 is actually the smallest. So if we were going to write it, the smallest number is 23. So writing it as a sentence and answering your question.
There you go. So another important step that we didn't mention before, go back and reread your question before you answer so that you really know what you're talking about.
You can never go wrong with rereading things as many times as you need to in order to answer the question properly.
Yes, it's really, really important. Reread, reread, reread.
That's right.
And thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Bye.